Every month, gameranx puts together a list of the best new mobile games. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the best new free iOS and Android games of June 2020. Just a quick disclaimer, Kingdom Hearts UX Dark Road, I don't know if I'm saying the name of that right, because I typically don't say any of that out loud, but the game is now available on Android. We're not going to talk about it because it's been on iOS since 2018. Starting off at number 10, it's Exos Heroes, which is another RPG. This is, of course, another gacha game. They're an acquired taste for some, but for others, but this is one that I would say has a pretty good combat system. In some ways, it kind of works like the new Final Fantasy VII ATB system, but not entirely, obviously, because it's still a much more traditional JRPG system. But you get mana from attacking, from getting hit, from using skills, blah, blah, blah. You build mana, you use the mana, and I would say that this dynamic, it works really well. This is actually a pretty detailed combat system that I think is above average for gacha games. The game is a little grindy, but it's actually satisfying as far as the grind goes. I don't feel annoyed really by any grinding, which is great. It's not that exploitative as far as free-to-play goes, and I've definitely enjoyed my time with it, so I have to recommend it. It's out on iOS and Android now. Moving on to number 9, it's Stellaris Galaxy Command, a sci-fi space strategy game. On the PC, Stellaris is a heavy management sim, and when they originally brought it to iOS and Android, they did it as kind of an early access thing, and they really pissed people off. It's obviously not the same game on mobile. It can't be. However, during the soft launch early access period, they took on a lot of feedback, and what we have here is actually a pretty good game. Again, I do want to warn you, if you're asking for exactly the same thing as PC, it's not that. It's a simplified version of that. However, it is a rewarding version of that. It's still a 4X, still a strategy game. Still actually looks really pretty on mobile for the most part. I think Stellaris Galaxy Command is a great game to play, although, again, don't go in expecting it to be the exact same thing as the PC version, because it's not. It's free on iOS and Android now. Moving on to number 8, it's The Academy, the first Riddle, which is a puzzle game oriented around an academy, obviously. You play as some kids that go to the academy. I'll say character models, not the most original look I've ever seen in my life. However, this game is highly stylized in almost every other way. I really enjoyed the environments, the vibrancy, the color, the animations, etc., etc. And I think that you'll find that if you like a game like maybe Professor Layton, or even like the famous puzzle series The Room, fans of a fairly wide range of series will find something to like about this game, I think. I'm not going to tell you that the storyline is going to lead you to some kind of epiphany about life, but it's certainly a serviceable storyline, and given the puzzles I think are engaging and good, it's not really the most important thing in the world. That's also not to say it's bad or anything, it's definitely alright. That's where I would probably identify the game as weak, but that's also not really why we play most mobile games, so for me, it kind of just works right. The Academy, the first Riddle, is free on iOS and Android now. At number 7 is Rose and Camellia. This game is not new. It's actually a very old Flash game. One I'd literally totally forgotten about, and I don't know how, but it might be because it seems like it actually was a game that was born for mobile more than a Flash game, because the way it worked, you had to use a mouse. Let me actually explain the dynamics of the game first, though. You're an aristocratic woman who is in a slap fight with other aristocratic women. On the phone, you swipe to slap them. That's the game. It does have a story, and it's hilarious, and I enjoy the hell out of it. But going back to when this was a Flash game, you used the mouse, and it's not as good. It doesn't mean it's not funny, but it's definitely not as good. It works much better now. And if this is something that sounds interesting or silly or funny or fun or whatever, it is. It's exactly what you think it is, and it works exactly as well as you think it does, regardless of what your opinion is right now. If you think it's probably going to be bad, you may not like it, but if you think it sounds like a good time, it is. Rose and Camellia is out on iOS and Android now for free. At number 6 is Desert Riders, a car shooting game in which you operate as a gunman on a car driving, obviously, through the desert. Other cars come up by the side. You have to aim at different places on the car to cause different types of damage. Depending on the situation, of course, you pick out of 4 different types of attacks, and it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. However, I will go ahead and say it is actually quite a bit of fun. Is it fun that's going to cause you to play for hours at a time? I'm not so sure about that, but if you keep your play sessions at a fair length, like 10-20 minutes, this is a game you're going to play for a while. The visuals are kind of a mixed bag. I have a feeling some people will think they look good, some people will think they don't. I like them. I like that they're colorful. It's very easy to tell what's going on at any given time. Things feel appropriate. Depth, honestly, I think works pretty well. They used color to good effect, but I think some will also find it maybe a little too boxy, a little too simplistic in aesthetic, given the game doesn't offer too many more experiences than the one you understand by the end of your first play section. The visuals could have been a way to vary it up a little bit more, but that's fine. Like I said, I think this is a really fun game, and that's what really matters. And on that note, give Desert Riders a shot. It's out on iOS and Android right now for free. At number 5 is a game called Endurance. It is the prequel to another game by the same developer called Ailment, which was, by the way, tremendously popular because it's a great game. It's basically a story-driven bullet hell with a kind of sci-fi horror aesthetic. You're on a ship, and you basically witness the events that caused the Ailment game. It definitely builds on Ailment. It's definitely more of an in-depth, more good-looking, more smooth-moving game. And in that respect, I think it's very good. It's a great shoot 'em up. Endurance is definitely worth it. Give it a shot. It's out on iOS and Android now for free. At number 4 is Johnny Trigger Sniper, which is a spin-off of Johnny Trigger in which you are sniping criminals who are in the process of committing crime. It's pretty good. I really think that this was actually a pretty good idea to spin off and do this with because it works really well. Very simple controls, you're finger aiming, finger shooting, tapping, blah, blah, blah. It's not difficult to figure this one out, and it's pretty satisfying. Now, I do have a minor criticism in that it doesn't have a massive amount of content, but again, we're talking about mobile games, things that you kind of do to pass time, and this is just like a perfect example of the kind of gameplay that works for that. In fact, I would go ahead and say that I wish more games would spend the time creating a mechanic that works as well as this does, and then maybe update with more content later, which I do hope that they do. At number 3 is HopBound, which is a game that sounds like it would be like some sort of rabbit-oriented multiplayer shooter. It's not that, though. It's actually a story-driven psychological horror game. It's kind of all over the place. You'll notice it's a platformer, sometimes an endless runner, sometimes a story-oriented, scary thing. But if you get past the learning curve with the gameplay, it's actually really an engaging story, if not completely sensical. I mean, it is a horror game. But it's got some good jump scares, it's got some great platforming, and I actually really enjoy the hell out of it. Although, I did get angry at it. I'm gonna warn you, you probably will too. HopBound is out on iOS and Android right now. And at number 2, it's Romancing SaGa Re. I mean, this is a RPG saga that people really like. And obviously, mobile phones have proven to be a pretty good platform for old school turn-based JRPG type combat, which this game aims to bring in a slightly more tactical version of without being alienating towards the more casual fans. If you're not particularly interested in tactical decisions, you can go autoplay. It does a good job of giving you a lot of character customization. And frankly, it's a pleasing game to look at. I enjoy seeing it. It works really well. Great animation, great style. My only complaint is that it's kind of samey. We've obviously seen a lot of these types of games at this point, and it's kind of like one of the best versions of a thing you've definitely already played. That's not a problem, but I'll say I definitely do like the pace of it. It's a bit faster than your average one of these. That's good. Romancing SaGa Re is out on iOS and Android now. Finally, at number 1 is Pokémon Café Mix. This is a game that puts you into the shoes of a cafe owner who, and I'm quoting this, serves delicious treats to Pokemon, which is, I mean, it's a completely accurate description of the game. However, that fails to include the fact that it is, of course, a puzzle game in which you're basically linking together Pokemon icons, clearing a game board, and honestly, it works pretty darn well. I enjoy it. As far as I'm concerned, it's a pretty simple game. Not every game has to be massively complicated. The puzzles sometimes get mildly difficult, but for the most part, it's kind of just a fun Pokemon puzzle game. And as far as I'm concerned, that has a right to exist. I enjoyed it. I'll recommend it. It's out on iOS and Android now. Got a few bonus games for you as well. Obviously, we put the paid games in bonus now because there aren't as many of them, but when they're good, they are, of course, still worth mentioning. Crying Suns for iOS and Android is a space fleet roguelite that puts you on a hexagonal grid. There is a PC version. There are a few limitations to the mobile version versus that, but it's still worth the $8.99. Crying Suns is obviously out on both iOS and Android, so give it a shot. Fallout Shelter Online, which is only available in Asia right now, you can find a way to play it if you really want to. It builds on the original Fallout Shelter in a very interesting way. It's more connected, there's more to do, and it is free, although you're technically probably going to have to download it in a way that isn't necessarily how you're supposed to. And finally, Dead Cells, which is just a phenomenal... It's a Metroidvania, but it's randomly generated. It's got pseudo permadeath, and this version is great. They did a good job porting it. It doesn't feel awkward ever, and as far as platformers go, it's one of the better ones on the platform now. It's also $8.99, and yeah, it's worth every cent. That's all for June, though. Leave us a comment. Let us know what games you played this month. Did you like any of the ones we talked about? Leave us a comment. Do us a favor and click like if you're not subscribed. Now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe and don't forget to click to enable all notifications. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.